All right. What are we doing here? We're going to talk about Obi Wan Kenobi episode 1. Like
Yeah,
that's where we're at.
That's what it says on the tin.
It does.
a series I thought would never ever get made.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting stuff here. So we are here to talk about it. A little quick recap. It's so the time frame of this for most people who haven't seen it already. This is like 10-year. Well, that's not how this episode starts off. Essentially, though, the series starts off 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. But what we wind up seeing in the beginning part of this episode is a bunch of clips from the movie, just to remind you where this is all going. Wait, actually, if I'm not mistaken, there is a clip in there that's not really like some of it is clips, and then there is Execute Order 66, and there's Younglings and stuff like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a scene showing you like Order 66 in action at the Jedi Temple, and our previous viewing of that in Star Wars lore is Anakin walking up with a group of clone troopers getting ready to wipe out the Jedi, and we see him look at that youngling with disturbance in his eye when he asked Master Skywalker, "What's wrong?" And you knew what was going to happen, and you cried internally.
Yeah. Is that when he pops his lightsaber? He's like,
Yeah, yeah. And I'm
Yep,
like,
and the rest is
oh.
left to your imagination.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of this series, we kind of see that side, and you just cry a little bit more, like, "Oh no, bro."
Someone think of the children.
I know.
Yeah, and then, well, the implication here is that one of these kids is going to grow up to be someone who's actually has a fairly sizable role in this, like in this opening episode, as a member of the Inquisitors.
Hmm.
Yes, yes. And there was I mean, and I know this may sound a little generic, but in that episode of The Mandalorian that actually happened in the episode of the Book of Boba Fett, where we actually saw some of Grogu's memories,
Mm-hmm.
there was some scenes there that were very similar, right? Like, because it's basically the same, right? And so
Right.
I was like, "Oh, I wonder." Nope, didn't quite get any clear tie-ins with that scene. So outside of the generic, you know what? We're killing younglings, Um,
And those that we don't kill, we're going to indoctrinate into our new order.
Hmm.
yes. So yeah,
This is also something that was implied that was done. And if you've played Jedi Fallen Order.
Hmm. Join us or die.
Mm-hmm.
hmm join us or die. Anyway, so yeah, lots of like I said, flashbacks. Kind of interesting to see that and all this, and then um yeah. So all right. So where does this episode start? I mean, we're basically we have all that kind of like intro commentary just to get people caught up, and they're like, "Hey kids, do you remember?" And so as you said, 10 years later.
Yeah, so I'm glad they're doing this series when they're doing it, just because I think that Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are kind of at that right age to where, like, they're seasoned, they look seasoned, yet still young enough to portray these characters. Because I mean, just looking at um, the flashback moments from the prequel trilogy, like it almost helps you. It almost helps bleed in this story into the lore, and pick up, like you said, 10 years after the events of Order 66 and Revenge of the Sith. So I know for many years we've been hearing rumors and that they were talking about this. So I'm finally glad that this series is here and able to show us the side of Obi Wan, detached from the Force and just detached from his belief. And kind of give us that insight on what he was doing between episodes 3 and 4.
which is
Mhm.
basically amounts to living his worst life.
Right. And, it kind of saddened me just to kind of see this disheveled Obi-Wan, who we knew at one point in his life was devout and faithful to the Jedi Order and the Force,
A leader of the
and
Jedi.
and a leader of the Jedi. And now we just see somebody who's lost all hope, lost faith, and has no more belief that that the Jedi Order is even necessary anymore. And so like it almost kind of saddened me too, like when people would bring up, or other characters in the series would bring up, like, the Jedis were once heroes, or we need to do something. The Jedis need to stand up, and it's like there's no more Jedis. Just go home, go hide. That's all you can do.
Hmm.
You know, a
Yeah,
man,
it's like,
a, a man with a sense of defeat in his voice.
well, you see it. They show the, what he's cutting sashimi off of the, thing.
Space
Like this, just
sashimi.
processing cut. What's that? It looks like sashimi, man.
Space
Mhm.
sashimi.
Space sashimi. And his kind of, he gets visited by a Jawa and his little rock dwelling. I mean, it's just like, it's just full of patheticness. But that's not, I mean, the episode doesn't start with him immediately. It does start with the Inquisitors, which Inquisitors we were, depending on where you're coming from, we're introduced to the Inquisitors either through Rebels or possibly through the comic books. So,
Yep.
And they're hunting Jedi. That's what they're doing. So, yeah, you get some idea of like the persecution, what's going on, right? So, and they found a Jedi.
Yeah, no name one who's trying to do his best by helping out a local bartender, but as the Grand Inquisitor points out, the Jedi have an itch too good. So all you got to do is just threaten some innocents, and they'll show themselves, which is exactly what happens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And this like Nameless Jedi's probably, or she's got a name, but I can't remember it. But he's basically there just to show us just how bad things are for Obi-Wan, because basically he's just trying to like keep his head down. Don't draw any attention from the Empire, because he basically believes at this point that all he can do is just make sure that Luke grows up, like be a decent person, that so he can eventually train him like in the ways of the Jedi after a certain point. It's very defeatist thinking, like at this point, but then again, it's like after everything he went through, it's like, I mean, man, it's like his whole life was just smashed because of his, like, the choices he made and the failings he had. So it's really not like unreasonable to see this, but man, it really is kind of a depressing start for this series. Even though basically the implication is that we're gonna like show you how Obi-Wan got his groove back over the course of these 6 episodes, at least
Yes.
in theory, anyway.
Mm.
That's what the movie should have been called. How Obi got his groove back. Co-starring Angela Bassett.
Mhm. Yeah. But yeah, he I guess the one of the, outside of, seeing his menial existence, currently, living essentially as a hermit, which is, kind of where we find him like in A New Hope anyway, right?
Mhm.
Essentially.
Right.
Although he's a little bit better off in that than he is here. This is, like the sting of defeat and the sting of the pride of the Jedi, and them being struck down by, their hubris is definitely like probably weighing on his head. And and I'd have to say, just, I do like the way that it's kind of reflected in him, like, McGregor pulls it off pretty well, like he doesn't,
Mhm.
does he argue? No. Um, you know, is he trying to make a fuss? Nope, he's not. He's keeping his head down. In fact, so much so, that when something does happen, I mean, but in the progress of this episode, we wind up finding someone who is either a Jedi or a fall. Yeah, we do run into this other Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and his advice to him is like, "Hey, just you should bury their lightsaber." Like, and you think that this is kind of rhetoric until at the end of the episode, you see him digging up his lightsaber, like he did that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, "Whoa, that's insane." So,
Yeah, I mean,
he's also tortured by the events. It's been 10 years. He's still tortured in his dreams about the events that happened.
mm-hmm.
With Anakin.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's still like a love, like a brotherhood love between him and Anakin, and just not being able to get over that and being haunted by that. I mean, it really shows that, yeah, I mean, he had to do what he had to do, but it really hurt him that he lost his best friend, not only to the dark side, but had to quote unquote take him out. At least so he thought. Um, so I it's really humbling to kind of see Obi-Wan in this state because, like you said, when we're introduced to him in A New Hope, he exhumed this like presence of wiseness even when we first were introduced to him, when he found a knocked out Luke, like, oh, he'll be all right, put his hand on his forehead to check on him, and it's like, oh man, we know this is the guy that our hero is looking for, and this is where he's gonna get the training he needs to become a badass. And so I think seeing Ewan McGregor portray this Obi-Wan that's like defeated, scared, and in hiding, for his own well-being, it's like it's different. It's almost a little shocking, but it's it's understandable because we felt that in that final battle, with him and Anakin in Episode 3, and now we're feeling that more where like the Empire's everywhere. There's no escaping. There's really no real hiding. You got to disconnect yourself from the Force and hide your abilities, and hide your barrier lightsaber so it doesn't give you away. Like you got to really stay low. And so, yeah, it's just, it's a little, like I said, it's a little heartbreaking to see Obi-Wan in this state. But like Jason said, I'm already starting to get those vibes, especially throughout the episode, making the hard choices he did in order to, carry on this mission that we'll discuss further. But, he pulled his head out of his ass and reluctantly went to go do what he needed to do. And we'll see him get his groove back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, there is something else, kind of like just on the whole Obi-Wan like arc to the from the movies to this point. Like something he was telling Anakin, "You are the chosen one." Like he was firmly entrenched in his master's belief about Anakin,
Oh yeah.
that he's the chosen one. Like to have like that, like from his point of view, crushed was just I like I said, I like the way that they show there's just so much weight to it all, and I think he pulls it off in showing all this. The actor does, at least. So
Yeah, it's like I got no. I think all the acting is pretty it's pretty well done, and everyone does a good job of embodying their characters. From McGregor as Obi-Wan to all the various Inquisitors as well, with Third Sister being the standout here because she's clearly got beef with Obi-Wan. I mean, not just it's not. I mean, not just like the whole like, oh, gotta kill the Jedi. It's like, no, she's specifically got reasons that she wants to find him, and you get the feeling maybe it's not just to look good in front of Vader.
yeah.
And I love her character, dude. That's like one of my excuse me, that's one of my favorite new characters in this series, just because she presents this like this veracity uh as a villain, to where like, oh man, like she's ruthless and seems to be able and seems to do whatever it takes to accomplish her goal, or get done what needs to get done, even if that means crossing Grand Inquisitor or disobeying direct orders from a superior. So I foresee her being like a real threat in this series and a genuine like uh, badass villain. So I'm excited to see where her character goes and
We're,
what her true connection with Obi-Wan is.
yeah, we're definitely not done talking about that piece.
Nope.
They clearly have something planned there. So, speaking
John
of,
said knowingly.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, like outside of the fact that I've seen 2 episodes more, or Jason, you and I have seen 2 episodes more than Myron. No offense, Myron, but I mean, even outside of those, that there's more coming. So it's kind of interesting. But speaking of, other things, I don't know if I'll pre-order a Lola toy, but I thought it was interesting. They really timed that pretty well. So,
Yeah,
so we do get to see young Leia in this, and um, and 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 then she becomes a part of the plot in the first episode. So, speaking of, what's her name? Reva, is that her name? Anyway,
Reva, the third sister.
third sister, right? Yeah. So, but we get to see young Leia, I mean, well, we saw young Luke, but we saw him through binoculars, and I think everyone has pretty much seen like that scene because it was in the trailer.
Hmm.
That's about all you get to see. That's it. Spoiler. There's not much there, but there is
That's a
another
misdirection on Disney's part there, because that basically because you assume that Luke's was going to play a much bigger part in the series than he was, and it turns out nope. This is the origin of help me, Obi Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So, yeah. So they're building that as well. So there's some, there's a lot of framework that they're filling in. But yeah. So they appear to have given her a very believable like character, even at her young age. So it's like you get that sass. That's fun. I
Yeah,
like that.
I found
She-
her annoying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Be honest about it, You'd be,
I get what you're saying, Myron. She would be like as insufferable as Judith is on The Walking Dead, if not for two things. One, we already know what Leia grows up to be like, and this personality is very much in line with that. And two, her precociousness, is explained by the Force, because it's kind of clear that even at this young age, she's clearly in touch with it. I mean, when she gave that cousin what for at the banquet, you knew that she was just like tapping into the Force right there. So yeah, it's like her character would normally be insufferable, but there's mitigating circumstances here.
Yeah, and I saw that too, just like how she, climbed the tree with ease, and her kind of spunkiness, like running through the woods when her mom said, "Oh, if she's not in the kitchen, she's probably running through the woods," and it's like, oh, that's why she did so well. That's why she hung out. That's why she hung in there so well in Endor. Yeah, I just kind of found her sass like, oh my goodness, I don't know, something about this girl. She's annoying the crap out of me. But I get it. I get it.
yeah. I'm gonna say, yeah, I agree with you, but I also agree with Jason. It's in line with what we know. Maybe, and if anything, maybe they kind of like possibly overdid it just a touch, but I don't have too much of a problem with it, basically. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, we do know her to be kind of like that. Amazing that she's that way with what? Is she 10 or something? She got to be 10. It's been 10 years and 10 years. So she's 10 years old. So is Luke. But okay, so we get to see that. There's also another scene with Owen, and kind of the cool thing is like you see Obi-Wan buying that thing that you do see Luke playing with, that little like shuttle toy thing.
Yeah,
And
T16 T16
yes,
like fighter or something like that.
yeah. And it's like that's kind of a nice little nod, little Easter egg there for it. But you do see you see Owen and then he throws that thing back at Obi-Wan, and then we get that it's like, hey, like you start to see some of the things that he was impressing upon Luke when we saw that in episode 4. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
I want to be like echoing things like not being like his father and stuff like that, so
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem, and Obi-Wan like reminding him, regardless, that's part of his mission, right? And we understand that.
Right.
Of course, the next scene is more tense, where you have like third sister and all them. They're all like, hey, interrogating all the townspeople and stuff like that, and cutting that one woman's hand off. Yeah, that's pretty nice stuff. And then threatening Owen. We know he lives, but still, yeah, some interesting things like, I'm gonna kill this guy's family or whatever she says. It's like, whoa, you guys are murderous.
Yeah, they're not playing around, and
Yeah.
I thought it was cold blooded to see that Jedi hanging in the square, and I'm like, obviously he didn't listen to Obi-Wan, but I was like, oh man, these guys aren't playing around. Like, they're putting it out on display.
Yeah, it's very yeah, that's pretty intimidating. That's the idea, right? It's like terror. um you know Rule the people with terror. This is what you help Jedi. You don't listen to us, this will be the reward.
Kill one
Mhm.
person to warm 100.
Yep. So compliance is mandatory.
Mhm.
um yeah. So um um yeah, so outside of the whole, like, essentially, Leia gets kidnapped, all that other stuff, and that kind of sets in the motion of, like, um what's his name? Organa, is that his name?
Bail Organa.
Bail
Bail
Organa.
Organa. Thank you, Bail Organa. Like, calling on Obi-Wan to help. Um, you know, um, so, and this is a plot by Third Sister to lure Obi-Wan out of hiding,
Mhm.
because she, yeah, so yeah, so she's,
She
there's some, hmm?
I was gonna say she knows that Obi-Wan has ties with Bail Organa, and probably presumes that Bail is going to reach out to an old friend. Like, if anyone's going to save her daughter, it's going to be a Jedi. So
Mhm.
just like what you guys mentioned earlier about, yeah, the Jedi's can't let the innocent be hurt. This is her plan, knowing like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to bring him out of the shadows.
Have the Jedi hunt himself.
It's a
Hmm.
trap. Anyway, so to quote a Star Wars, it's a trap. But let's, um, you know, um, it takes a second visit from Bale to convince him to actually try. That's pretty interesting.
Yep.
He's like, I'm sticking over here with the kid, the boy. Go find some bounty hunter or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Basically.
it's pretty hardcore. It's like, wow. But yeah, it takes that second visit, and then he decides to do it. So he unburies his lightsaber, and we see that he has Anakin's lightsaber right there in the same box.
Hmm.
Interesting. So, you know, so we're starting to see those things by the end of this episode. So, um, but I don't know. Just based upon the strengths of the weaknesses of this episode, well, what did you think of it?
I mean,
Oh,
I liked it. I mean, it's like the production values, it's like are just the size they were in the previous series, and and like there's a level of like assuredness that like flows through like the whole thing. Like they got a plan here, and they're gonna execute it. It's just that aside from like the whole from the Leia reveal, it's like can't say there's like a lot of that really surprised me. Stuff that like maybe go, oh, this is gonna be like something new or something that I haven't seen before. I mean,
Hmm.
you get this. There's a feeling that you kind of know how the series is gonna go, just based on this first episode alone. And it's like it's. I mean, it's safe, but it's like it's comfort food at this point. So I mean that's not a bad thing, but I don't know. It's like I mean it's not going to be like I say like a breakout success like on the level of the Mandalorian. At least that's what I'm guessing so far.
What do you think, Myron?
I like this introduction. I'm anticipating more just knowing that Vader, Hayden Christensen, is reprising his role. So I'm anticipating seeing Vader in action. But this is something ever since I've heard the rumors of this series, like this is something I've been wanting to see for a long time that I didn't realize I really wanted to see. But
Mhm.
sometimes you just wonder, like, yeah, in between episode 3 and A New Hope, like, what was Obi doing? Like, was he practicing his ways of the Force, or just really staying hidden? Like, what has he been doing this whole time? And even in episode 3 when Yoda mentioned an old master, um, is on Tatooine and was going to show Obi Wan how to commune with him. Did that even happen? And will that it happen? So there's certain things I'm hoping to see and anticipating. So I think this was like a good setup and kind of building up the urgency and the distress of what Jedi's are going through during this era from a live action perspective. Because like to Jason's point, I played Jedi Fallen Order and I love that game. And there you really get that urgency. Like, man, you can't even flash a lightsaber, or you really got to be careful to not show your powers. Show your abilities with the Force, because the Inquisitors will hunt you down and will strike you down. And so, I love seeing that. I love seeing that in a live action setting, and actually seeing like an old school Jedi master kind of falling into um, those same feelings of dread and fear, um, when we already know he's established himself as the shit. um, the reach of the empire is wide, and he can't be careless. And so, with this new mission to rescue Leia, obviously, I have this feeling that yeah, he's gonna put himself out there, put himself on blast, and expose himself, which means that his time on the run is going to be in jeopardy, because he'll be under a microscope from the Empire and the Inquisitors. So I'm really excited to see what the next 5 episodes will bring.
Yeah. Um.
Hmm.
Um.
So John,
What
your thoughts?
yeah. Well, my thoughts are more along, like first of all, just rating this episode here. I think it's a good episode, not a great episode, but it does definitely give you some context, and I think that's what it was meant to do, right? So it's on that. My expectations for the series, well, I wish I could time travel and tell you what the expectations of of the prequels were when I heard about them coming out. Because I certainly had a lot of like expectations there, and I'm like, it wouldn't be too hard to like fill in the gaps, But then it turns out that what I might think is a really good path to follow may not necessarily be what they want to tell as the story. However, what things that I would like to see is I would like to see more of like the like more of like Darth Vader. Remember, Darth Vader's kind of we'll say 10 years is kind of new at the job. Okay, we'll say that. We'll also say like, okay, how do we go from and this is the namesake of the series is Obi Wan. So I would like to see how we go from what we're seeing here, what we understood from the prequel trilogy. And I actually don't go to like A New Hope. I go to like, how about that scene in Rebels where
Mm,
we run into Obi-Wan again? Like, how do we get to that guy? You know what I
yeah.
mean? So either one will work, right? But like that's part of it, Also the possibilities, of who else we might see in this series and how they might have played a role in this series, right? So other Jedi. Definitely the threat of the Inquisitors is all around. But like, how, could we see others that, were in Rebels? Possibly, they may decide to do that. Don't know yet. It's a limited series, so I'm not expecting tons, but it would be nice to see some really good tie-ins, and then, how Obi gets his groove back. He's for sure. Um, you know, how he goes from this to that, and how his understanding changes, and will we see, Qui-Gon as a Force ghost, and a lot of things, because I think I don't know, Qui-Gon has shown up in the cartoons, right, as Force ghost, right?
I believe so.
I thought so. Yeah, that's what I want to say. So
I think the Magic 8 Ball says signs point to very likely.
yeah. So yeah. So that's kind of it, and I think that we're just gonna have to see how it all comes together. So, yep.
Oh,
That's
one thing I do want to point out here before we go.
Yeah.
Did you recognize the lead kidnapper who got Leia on Alderaan?
Flea
Yeah, it's like
from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
yes,
yes.
it's like full-time bassist and occasional actor and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're wondering like, well, is he the only special guest star we'll see in this series? No, we've got an even better one showing up in episode 2.
Yep.
Interesting, and I'll have to watch that tomorrow. Both 2 and 3.
Yep. So yeah, that's I think that there's we'll I think that we're gonna have to see how this unfolds. I don't like throwing, just looking at one episode and then just throwing it out. I usually give series like this a good chance,
Mm-hmm.
so and like I've seen episodes 2 and 3 and I'm still in, so there's nothing that would like throw me out of this show. So but with all things, it's like, hey, let them finish telling the story, and we'll figure it, and we'll see how it is overall. And that's what I'm looking forward to in this one.
You and me both.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody.
Have a good weekend, kiddies.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye. May the force be with you. No, I don't know how to do an Obi Wan voice, but still.
May the force be with you.